Welcome to Wise, Wise headquarters in San Jose, California. This is Tarkan Maynor, President Wise, CEO at Wise Technology. For those who don't know Wise, by the way, Wise is W-Y-S-E, not W-I-S-E for those who don't know Wise very well. Wise has been here in the Valley, in the Silicon Valley, for about 30 years. Actually, we just celebrated our 30th birth year, on May 1st. We started May 1st, 1981. And we're very happy to be here today. We're hosting our Lieutenant Governor, Gavin Newsom, and President of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Carl Guardino. And I'm very proud to make this happen here because it's a special time for Wise as well. Wise is one of those companies who started here in Silicon Valley. And there are not many IT companies you're going to find in the industry who've been around for 30 years. So for the past 30 years, this company has been reinventing itself and innovating and innovating and innovating. And you're not going to find more than 10 companies who've been in this industry, in the Valley, been doing that. So it's an interesting time. And with all these new technology innovation around cloud, social media, mobility, IT consumerization, security, cybersecurity, all these new technology, we're very happy to announce that we're enjoying a very fast growth as a company. We're hiring more, we're investing more in these spaces as a cloud company, and we see the opportunity worldwide. And we're so happy that all that good stuff, all that innovation, all that growth is coming from Silicon Valley, where we live, and from the capital of Silicon Valley here in San Jose. So on that note, it's exciting for me to host the Lieutenant Governor, which I appreciate him to be here to announce his new agenda for economic recovery, growth, and competitiveness for the state. And my dream is to make this right and take it not only for the state, but nationwide and hopefully for the rest of the world from here, starting in Silicon Valley, the mecca of innovation. So on that note, I want to introduce Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. Stage is yours. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, Tarkan, for hosting us. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for helping organize today's event with hundreds, literally hundreds of CEOs that we'll be making a formal presentation to in just a moment. Let me begin by stating the obvious. California has a jobs crisis. California has had a jobs crisis. The newest numbers that came out last week were extraordinarily distressing. Unemployment rate in June clicked back up over 12% to 12.1%. 2,180,000+ people in this state do not have a job. Over a third have been out of work for over 6 months. It is an extraordinary time in this state. We have 52 counties. I want to repeat this because it needs to be repeated. 52 counties with double-digit unemployment rate of the 58. We've got 22 with unemployment north of 15%. And if in your Imperial County, the unemployment rate is 28.5%. And contrast that to other parts of our state with unemployment as low as 8%. Marin County. Think about that. Within our own state of California, you have unemployment rate as low as 8% in this economy and as high as 28.5%. This is serious. These are Depression-era numbers. And we can talk about jobs, jobs, jobs till we're blue in the face, but unless we act on an agenda to actually produce results, then we're fooling not only ourselves, but we're fooling all of you. And I'm one of those people that is a little sick and tired of the rhetoric. I'm sick and tired of being defensive about this state. I'm sick and tired of making excuses about this challenge. And I'm concerned that unless something dramatic happens, that we're going to continue down this path of creeping mediocrity. And what do I mean by that? Well, we have a problem that's much deeper than the problem that was manifested after Lehman Day on September 15th, 2008. It's not just the macroeconomic turndown that's precipitated in the current challenge. We've had a challenge for over 30 years in this state. This does not get the attention it deserves. We've accepted a new norm in California, a state that has long prided itself on being on the leading and cutting edge, as we were between 1950 and 1980. But beginning in 1980, in the last 30 years, we've become about average in job growth. People haven't focused on that. There is a structural challenge in this state, for that matter, in our nation. We grew at 3.7% annual job growth between 1950 and 1980. The nation at just 2.2%. Since 1980 to 2010, brand new numbers. We flatlined at 1.1%. Nation's job growth is actually a little bit better than California. So this is serious, because this is about not only our fate and future in a $1.9 trillion economy, but by definition, the fate and future of this country and the impact this state has in terms of the global economic realities. So we've got an obligation not to wait for Washington, D.C., not to wait for Asia to stumble, not to wait for some global contagion that puts us back on top by the very nature of everyone else starting to temper their economic growth. You saw the new numbers that just came out in the nation this morning. It won't get any attention because it's all about the debt crisis, but anemic GDP growth in the second quarter of this year, substantially lower than people expected. And the new understanding that the recession was much deeper and the recovery much weaker in the last 24 months than people had truly understood. We cannot wait around for the federal government to fix this. And we can't keep making excuses and pointing fingers up in Sacramento. I can care less who's to blame. I really can. I'm serious. I just got there, and maybe it's coming from local government where at the end of the day, for all the differences of opinion, no one cares you're Democrat or Republican. They care that you get something done. Up in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., it's which side of the tribe you're on. You're Democrat or Republican. I mean, people have a hard time up there photographing themselves with the other side. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. So in the last few months, I decided to just step into this void because this state doesn't even have a plan. This state doesn't have a sense of direction. This state has never taken into account, nothing that has been sponsored from the state in decades has taken into account our strengths and looked at where we're weak. We've never put it all together. We've never analyzed best practices within the state, let alone analyze best practices around the rest of the country and, for that matter, around the rest of the world until today. Today, we are introducing a different dialogue around California's jobs and competitiveness. More than anything else, that's the purpose of this document. It's rather simple, that we need to at least assess our strengths and weaknesses, and we need to discuss in a different manner with some specificity, some intentionality, and a sense of purpose, what we can do to turn this around. The folks in Madera County and Sutter and Imperial County can't wait. The folks here in Silicon Valley can't wait for all of the good news emanating from this place and around this region. It's not good enough to carry the rest of the economy in the state of California. Something dramatic needs to change. The purpose of this is to begin to change the dialogue, to ask better questions. I am a believer, if you do not like the answer, ask a better question, and begin the process of some quick wins to start building trust and momentum so that we can move forward to address some of the most vexing and substantive challenges this state faces. It's a place-based plan. It focuses on regions and clusters. It focuses on what's right in this state, and that's people. We're the ideas factory for the world. Innovation is still our strategic advantage. Brain power wins. This state has always out-educated. We've always out-innovated. And we've always out-produced. We have a vibrant manufacturing sector in this state that needs to be supported. And in turn, those three things have built a vibrant middle class, all of which now are at peril. Education system is beginning to show wear. The innovation ecosystem is being challenged, not just overseas, but around the rest of the nation. And the challenges of manufacturing are self-evident in this state, and the middle class is beginning to disappear. What made us great has been challenged. So all of that, you know, all of that we've oriented here in a narrative. The challenge is now what to do. And if there's any part of the document, I hope you take a look at it, starting on page 23. Just skip the rest and read the action agenda, the next 180 days. Because as far as I'm concerned, today is not about what we did yesterday. Today is about what we're going to do tomorrow. And in the next 30, 60, 120, and 180 days, culminating with a summit that we'll call for in the first quarter of next year, to focus on a common agenda, regardless of party, regardless of region, north, south, east, west, regardless of one's biased and predetermined perspective. Focus on areas where we can work together, business and labor. And you know what makes me proud of this effort? The Chamber of Commerce has exampled this already, along with the Labor Council in this state. They've already sent out word of support for this effort. Democrats and Republicans have already come out and said this is the beginning, we hope, of a different dialogue in this state. I do not want to overpromise, nor do I want to overindulge, particularly at this moment when I'm going to be repeating myself in a few moments across the way. But I want to tell you, this is not about some lieutenant governor. Guys like me come and go, and most of you never even knew who was before me. I get it. But it is about the fate and future of the most magnificent experiment God has ever conceived, and that's California. And it's not rote cliche to say, as we go, so goes this nation. It's absolutely true. There is no recovery nationally unless California gets its act together. And I can't look at people's faces. I could care less they're Republicans living out in Bakersfield or Fresno and folks in the Imperial Valley and say that I have any clue what we're going to do for them at the moment. But with this new dialogue, I am confident in the next 30, 60, 180 days that we're going to be back with some specific, actionable ideas to begin to address their fate and future, and in turn ours. Because at the end of the day, as I was taught down here at Santa Clara University, we're many parts but one body. And when one part suffers, we all suffer. We're all in this together. And so we got to step up our game. We got to get back in the game. We have 38 specific ideas to do that. And we're going to move with deliberative speed to get back. And I'll close with this. How appropriate. Because it seemed interesting. I've been casing other people's joints for months now, virtually and physically, traveling across not only this state but across the country, learning about best practices. And with the extraordinary contribution of Brookings, with a great team of Eve Maldonado O'Toole and Chris Garland, with Brookings' great leadership of Merrick, Bruce Katz, and others, and McKinsey's guidance on an organizational change with Lenny Mendoca and others, we have hopefully created a framework where in a year or two, I don't have to read on the front page of the USA Today what I read when I was leaving Washington, D.C. just 2 days ago, and that is, you need a job, move to Texas. That in 2 years, the headline's going to be, need a job, stay in California, or move back to the great state of California. Thank you. And with that, I am proud and honored to introduce someone who from day one got our attention in Sacramento, put a white paper together with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, who called me immediately and said, you need to step it up. You're now part of the problem. Welcome to Sacramento. We have been calling for real action for some time. You need a new organization. You need a different energy and a different attitude up here. And we're here to help. And we want to support you, not to run the 90-yard dash, but to run the 100-yard dash in these efforts. And nobody was more instrumental in this effort and will be more instrumental in producing our results, or at least our intended results, than the person that's coming to the mic, and that is Carl Guardino. Thank you, Carl, for your leadership, and thank you for all of your support.
Appreciate you. I almost never disagree with our lieutenant governor, but I will say
that I did not say he was part of the problem. I said he was a big part of the solution. And we are honored to have you here at Weiss, hosted by Tarkan Maynor and the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. California has a simple yet stark choice. We can be engaged or we can continue to be enraged. For too long, private sector leaders, as well as our public sector partners, have chosen not to engage each other and to sit on the sidelines and be enraged. That continues to change today. As the Lieutenant Governor just stated, right after the November election, the governor's team reached out and asked us to put together a white paper, and they asked exactly the right question. It was this: what would it take for technology and manufacturing employers to start creating jobs in California again? They hit it on the head. With input from 150 Silicon Valley CEOs, we produced that white paper, sent it to him and all 120 members of the legislature on January 2nd. And that call to the Lieutenant Governor happened throughout December and January as we talked about his desire for our state to be more economically competitive and how Silicon Valley and the rest of the state can help. So during those ensuing months, he invested the time to come here, 7 different CEO business cluster roundtables, 12 to 20 CEOs, high tech, biotech, clean and green tech, venture capital, finance, 7 different clusters. The governor and the first lady joined us for an 8th cluster as well. All told, 160 CEOs giving input into this brilliant document that is being released today. To be transparent with media, we wanted to make sure, as the Lieutenant Governor did, that a state that is bleeding cash also made sure that this didn't add to that. So we are proud to have helped fund this report, working with Brookings and McKinsey on the document. But what's important, as the Lieutenant Governor said, is not just the 7 months of intense work by the Lieutenant Governor and his team, McKinsey, Brookings, the leadership group, 160 of our CEOs and CEOs throughout the state of California, along with labor and other leaders. What's important is what's next, because it would be easy to say, one more study on the shelf, soon to be forgotten. Here is why that is not going to happen. First, we're not going to let it. Too much is at stake, and California is at a tipping point. When we're 50th out of 50 for the 7th year in a row in CEO magazine, when Forbes and Fortune rank us 50th out of 50, when our best mark is from MSNBC because gloriously we're 47th out of 50 in terms of a business climate, something has got to change. It has to be visionary, strategic, tactical, and with timelines so that there's accountability. It has to be owned high up enough that we have a plan, that we performed a plan, and that the ownership drives it forward. Here's what the leadership group is offering to our Lieutenant Governor today moving forward. Silicon Valley has a delegation to Sacramento of 13 members, 4 senators, 9 assembly members. We will gather those 13 members with at least 13 top Silicon Valley CEOs so that the Lieutenant Governor can walk us all through the 38 actionable items and timeline in this report, and that we can agree together what we're going to champion in Sacramento to get this implemented. That's one. But we're only one region. Sure, we're the best region, but we're only one. So what else? As you may know, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and our partners at the Orange County Business Council 4 years ago formed a partnership. It's the REAL Coalition, Regional Economic Association Leaders. It's 19 of the top regional chambers, regional business associations in California. 10 million jobs represented by those 19 organizations. My counterpart, Lucy Dunn at OCBC, has offered the same to the Lieutenant Governor. We believe each REAL Coalition colleague will do the same so that our public sector partners, top business leaders, and each regional business cluster in California will come together to make sure that there's accountability to not only implement this plan, but to perform to plan. Last comment about this Lieutenant Governor and why we're so proud to work with him. He has signed the front of a paycheck, not just the back of paychecks. He has 17 restaurants, about 1,000 employees. He knows what it means. He knows what it takes to be successful in creating and keeping jobs. He also doesn't care about partisan politics. When he and I accompanied 10 Assembly Republicans to Texas, the grief he took from interests within his own party as well as members of his own party was shameful. That should not happen. No business, no elected official in competing doesn't evaluate its strengths, assess its weaknesses, know its competition, and go out to win. That's what we did by going to Texas. That's what he's done by going to other states. We're going out and finding out what they're doing so that we can beat them and put California rightfully back at the top of job creation, business climate, and economic competitiveness where we belong. So thank you for allowing us to be here, for coming, and I'm sure the Lieutenant Governor would be happy to take a few of your questions, as would Tarkan and I. Lieutenant Governor?
Excellent. Any questions?
Lieutenant Governor, there's a report that someone's trying to oust you from the Democratic Central Committee in San Francisco because you're a Marin County resident.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, and it's utterly trivial and meaningless, and it's in my rearview mirror, and I want to talk about jobs and the economy because that's what people care about, and that's what we should care about.
Have you already been ousted?
No, I was about to. This is on the point of such trivia and insignificance. It's hard for me to even put together a sentence. I, yes, have temporarily located in Marin, and as a consequence was sending a letter of resignation to the local Democratic Central Committee. Now, as a temporary resident in Marin, I'm afforded the opportunity to be on the Marin Democratic Central Committee. This is unbelievably non-consequential.
You mentioned your plan, the manufacturer's tax credit. Can you talk a little bit more about tax breaks and whether you think they're necessary and which ones?
Yeah, I think the challenge with the tax system is we never really evaluated it. It's ready, fire, aim. Folks are offering up tax credit here, tax break here, but no one is actually measuring it against a plan. What are we actually trying to accomplish? So the challenge for us is to really assess the efficacy of what we're already doing. The challenge with that, no one necessarily knows what we're doing. A lot of people know, but not one person can tell you every tax program, break, or grant program in the state because there is no entity. There are 36 entities in job support, retention, and creation in the state. There are over 100 regulatory entities in this state, which is a remarkable thing. I want to repeat that as well. There is no jobs agency in the state of California. There are 36 job agencies. It's so perverse, it's so remarkable that you really shouldn't believe it, except it's true. There's no plan, there's no coordinated team, there's no ability to implement. One of the key recommendations here, and one of the purposes of bringing McKinsey in from an organizational perspective, was to organize around a new competitiveness team and a new economic development team for the state of California. And we've been working very closely with our leadership. We're working in real time on this. Speaker John Perez has been an extraordinary partner in these efforts. He has a bill already pending in the legislature. We hope to have it on the governor's desk as early as September. So in the next number of weeks, that will establish this new economic development agency. And then we'll populate it with a team committed to the focus of not just recruiting new headquartered companies, which gets all the headlines, but to focus on where real job growth comes from. And that's supporting new startups and supporting organic business growth. I'll repeat that by making this point. 95% of in-state job creation in this country comes from startups and existing business growth. 3 to 5% comes from what we call smokestack recruitment or headquarter transfers. Yet a lot of our tax credits, a lot of our grants, a lot of our money goes to the 3%, not the 95%. So one of the key recommendations in here is to analyze where our existing resources are going. We've actually put together one data, it will be on our website, that links all the incentives in the state. I think this is the first time we've ever done that. And we are then going to make recommendations in 120 days to the legislature about redirecting those incentives. We've scored them as costs in our budget. This is not about more money necessarily. It's about redirecting existing resources in a more strategic manner. I happen to believe that if you're serious about manufacturing, and I believe in investing in people and products, not paper and perks, that if our economy and middle class are going to come back in the state, we've got to produce products. And we've got to get back into the manufacturing game. That in order to do that, you have to be competitive. And California is one of 3 states that does not provide exceptions or exemptions on taxes for the purchase of equipment. Just one of 3. How can you be competitive from a manufacturing perspective when you're doing something that almost no other state in the nation does? Those will be specifically discussed, and those will be exampled as recommendations.
Do you think in general that the tax burden on businesses here is too high?
I think there's no question when you're 44th out of 50 states in income tax and 43rd out of 50 states in corporate taxes, that the issue of taxation needs to be reviewed. There's no question in my mind. But to me, it's a limiting part of this. I mean, we've got so many other things we also need to do. And what tends to happen in these discussions, and the reason, if someone's curious, why has this never really happened before? Why isn't the state sponsored an economic plan? Why don't we have an agency? Why do we shut down all our trade offices and we don't have one person overseas when Pennsylvania has 22 foreign offices and we have 0? Why is it that we have completely retreated at a time when everybody else had? It's because of these conversations. Because some folks say, well, you got something called CEQA. You need to eliminate it or you're not serious about jobs. Someone else says, don't tell me about jobs until you get rid of the income tax like they have in Texas. Then you're serious about jobs. And until then, I'm not going to waste my time because you're obviously not serious. Everyone has their trophy. Everyone has their agenda. And what happens is they start shooting at each other before we even sit down in a room to discuss things. What I'm trying to do with this plan, and that's why in the back you'll see specifically, again, in very detailed terms with these charts, the timelines associated with these actions, is some small wins to build up towards those more vexing and challenging issues by building trust and a sense of common purpose and mission. If I begin by saying we're going to eliminate CEQA and 8-hour workdays and 40-hour work weeks and rest breaks and get rid of corporate taxes and income taxes and lower sales tax, cut it in half, and get rid of, do as-of-right zoning and give away $3 or $4 billion in grants for businesses that want to relocate here from Arizona, we're not going to go anywhere. And that's where we've been. We've been stuck because of the old ways of doing things. So we're going to focus on things like getting a patent office in California. Why does that matter? Well, more patents emanate out of here than any other place on the planet. And there's no patent office. U.S. Congress just authorized a bill for 3 new patent offices. You know the first place they chose? Detroit, Michigan. Fabulous, but doesn't help us out here. Where's the leadership on that? That's very important. Where's our leadership in supporting some changes at the FDA? That's extraordinarily important to the medical device companies out here. What about Lawrence Livermore and Lawrence Berkeley Labs? What about Sandia? What about the commercialization opportunities and partnerships with businesses in and around those labs? What is the specific strategy of commercialization and translational work? How are we supporting that research at the UC system? Are we doing what others are doing like MIT and Utah? We've analyzed those things in terms of that commercialization. We're not. But we can learn from those things. Those are the things that we can start building momentum and support. Permitting matters to me more than regulation. Carl mentioned those businesses. I mean, we've got hotels and wineries. I've only had one CEQA challenge, and that was a new winery I built in Napa. 950 of my 1,000 or so people I've hired were hired without ever thinking about CEQA. It was irrelevant to me. And we created close to 1,000 jobs without ever worrying about CEQA. What I care about is that local planning commissioner, or that crazy city supervisor, or that Department of Building inspector that was different than one day before that made me rip out my bathroom because she decided to change her mind from something she told me a week ago. That matters more. So what we're talking about from a regulatory frame is what 9 out of 10 businesses go through, which is interacting with local government and regional government, counties, not just the state, and aligning our priorities. Remember, you cannot do business in the state of California without doing business somewhere in the state of California. There are 400 and almost 480 somewheres in this state, cities, 58 counties. What are they doing to align with the state of California? So we're chunking those things down. What are their incentives? What are their economic development strategies? That's why it's a bottom-up approach, local-based strategy, again, place-based. And so this is a different way of addressing issues in this state, but taxation certainly is a big issue.
I don't want to dominate it here, but you mentioned speakers cooperation. Oh, there was.
You can jump back.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, you mentioned that all of this is going to culminate in a summit next quarter.
Well, the whole idea is, this is not a static document, it's an organic document. It needs to be updated. We looked at best practices across the country on their economic development strategies, and there are a lot of them. Oregon, interestingly, informed us on a model where every year they come back on regional basis, on a metro basis, and they update their regional plans that inform their statewide strategy. So it's constantly evolving, and that's the idea here, is that this has nothing to do with the document that will be produced a year from now. And we want to start that new dialogue the first quarter of next year. And we want to have real deliverables before then. And those are the 38 specific action items that are laid out in detail in the back of this document.
Last question.
Yeah, could you just sum up for the general public what the plan is in simple, easy to understand?
New economic development strategy, a new plan. So new ideas. I mean, and you can read this and you can see exactly what the specific recommendations that focus on manufacturing, focus on our innovative ecosystem, that focus on alignment between cities, counties, state, and federal agencies, creates a new economic development agency in the state. We don't have one. Creates an exports and trades orientation, including open up offices overseas, not at the expense of the taxpayers in California. We'll start in China. In a few weeks, we'll announce that. I just did, I guess.
I got a call this morning that there is an economic development agency in the government.
Is there? No. Yeah, there's not. It's something called GoED. It's not even in this Capitol. It's nice, and if you're here, there's 6 or 7 folks that we actually thank them in our document. It was a good idea that came too late that Governor Schwarzenegger created right at the end of his administration. They just celebrated their 1-year anniversary, and they're just another agency. It's not integrated as we're promoting to integrate in the state. It's exactly what's wrong. Is when politicians respond to a crisis, we do 2 things. We call for a task force, which just allows us to buy time, or we create another layer of bureaucracy, another hurdle, another regulation, or another entity. And what we did is we just created another entity without considering the impact to all the other agencies. What we're doing here is complete reorg with a new centralized agency with a different mandate and a different focus.
Your office staff
All of this will work, and this again is in the plan. Take a look at it, please. I know it's long. It was a lot longer when it started. We tried to cut it down. I have a 19-page version, but it's really small type if you like that. The idea is that nothing works without the support of the executive leader. So what I'm offering in this plan is getting rid of commissions like mine. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Commission in the state. You've never heard of it for good reason. I don't want you to ever hear about it again. I think it should be done away with, and it should be reorganized under the governor's office. The governor of the state, whoever the executive leader is, in private sector organizations as well as public. McKinsey did a wonderful 2-page analysis of this in this report. The only way these initiatives work is with that central support. We have been working very closely with Governor Brown and his team. I know Carl and others have been as well, and I have great hope and expectation that he'll embrace the broad stroke principles and support us in the next steps. But we're not walking away from this. No matter who supports it or not, this is too essential to get caught up in indecision or politicking. And so we're going to keep pushing, and we're going to keep organizing. No one thought we would do this because they told us we didn't have to. They said you couldn't find the money. We did. They said, you can't find the good ideas because they're difficult to find, and they Doesn't matter anyway, because it's just another report. We're coming at this in a completely different way, and you're going to see, I think, and Carl's eager to say something, you're going to see some real action coming from this.
Thanks, Lieutenant Governor. If I may stay, the Lieutenant Governor has stressed next steps. The plan, performing the plan, having someone accountable for the plan's delivery and annual refreshment so that we can look at data points and how we have done is key. But the next step starts right outside of this building when we have, as the Lieutenant Governor has talked about, CEOs running global companies, giving their input on the plan and their feedback of what else needs to be in the plan. We have 2 panels, and I urge you to stay because it's part of the transparency we want to have. Non-scripted, interactive dialogue with the Lieutenant Governor and those CEOs. The first panel is Innovation Economy CEOs, 7 different CEOs, 7 different clusters. The second panel reflects California's regional economies so that we get a sense of how the regions see what California needs to do. So please, if you can invest the time, do stay for the next 2 hours outside as we have that discussion with these CEOs and regional business leaders.
Lieutenant Governor, how much more cost to implement the plan? And also, can you talk about that office in China?
Yeah. Office in China is a roll-up of something we did in San Francisco called China SF. We're going to roll it up as China California. We've got organizations all up and down the state that are sponsoring and supporting it and privately fundraising to put it together. When we announce it, you'll have the details of exactly who they are. We'll be as transparent as we were in San Francisco and hopefully as successful as we were in San Francisco. We opened up offices in Shanghai to begin with and then Beijing. The hope here is not just to focus on the 2 big coastal areas, but to start focusing on the new provinces and new economy even in China, be strategic and complementary to the work being done elsewhere in the world, particularly in Brazil. We was back east on Monday and Tuesday in Washington talking to the State Department about supporting our efforts, and they've committed to that support. We've just never asked. It's, again, the bar is so extraordinarily low here in the state. Do not underestimate how low the bar is in California. I mentioned Brazil. I also am committed to the Karnataka region around Bangalore. I think we should look. I mean, George Ignatian opened about 10. I mean, we had dozens of these things. You know, we were in 2003, we shut down our Trade and Commerce office. I don't know about you, but go back, little history books, 2003 was sort of a seminal point of time, wasn't it? We all sort of reconciled the new world, right? The world is now flat. Global interdependence, globalization, and everybody else stepped up and got into the game of reaching out, and we actually retreated at a time when we should have been engaging. There are offices overseas. Again, cities like San Francisco decided to put one up with our own resources and our own capacity, but the state doesn't sponsor it. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. Again, I told you this, the one example of Pennsylvania, and by the way, they share some office overhead with the state of Maryland. They've partnered. And we detail some of that in the plan. But there are, we counted, at last count, we were at 32 states with foreign offices. I mean, it's hardly Pennsylvania and Maryland, but not one here in the gateway state, California. No trade strategy, no export strategy. 95% of the business opportunity out there is outside the borders of this state and country. No manufacturing plan, no business plan for job support, let alone recruiting new headquarters. No organized team of folks outside of some well-meaning folks in agencies that were created but are never supported, and in a pretty paltry results. And those are the things we're reconciling. We're going to go after some quick wins. We've got some legislation that we want to support that Zoe Lofgren's put together around H-1B visas. We've got the Patent Office's ideas. We've been talking to folks at the XM Bank. I'll be up in Fresno Monday talking about some of the exports plans. We're going to put together some competitive grants to support export strategies and trade promotion within regions. We've got a lot of real detailed work. We're going to look at these regulatory challenges, timelines. I sort of joked with someone the other day about, 18 months? What takes 18 months? Seriously, why does CEQA take 18 months? Why does anything take 18 months? Who decided that? You don't have to get rid of regulations. You can support them, but you can modernize them. This is really about modernizing not only our delivery system, but our regulatory environment as well. It's about coordination. It's about collaboration. And dare I say this, at peril of someone saying, boy, that's obvious, that it may not be so obvious. And it's this point. We got to get back in the game. Attitude. I mean, when Carl and I came back from Texas, I honestly don't want to talk out of school, but I think both of us were really impacted by the attitude around job creation and job promotion in the state of Texas. And we don't, I mean, I forget bad attitude. We just don't, we're sort of, I don't know. How do I best describe the attitude of the state without appearing to be bashing us?
The attitude was, we're going to move at the speed of business. That was the attitude. It wasn't, we're going to give away the farm or anything else. We're going to move at the speed we need to move at. Even if the decision at the end is no, at least you know so that you can make your business plan accordingly. That's the attitude California had, and that the lieutenant governor, the leadership group, and we believe the great majority of California business, labor, and other leaders want to get back to.
We're going to actually, by the way, just, you know, things is simple. I'll just close, but I think it just populates some more ideas. We don't even organize around trade shows. How many people come back and go, you know, it's this amazing trade show, agricultural trade show. And there was a great thing because the raisin folks were there, or the, you know, milk folks were there, or the dairy folks, but California wasn't there. Biotech, here we are, the birthplace of life science and biotechnology, and we missed the big biotech conferences. Heck, the governor about 2 months ago in Massachusetts did one of those crazy sing-ins. You ever see that commercial where someone walks in casually and all of a sudden they take off their jacket and they start singing and then everybody else starts singing? He did one of those crazy things just to promote the brand biotech and life science in Massachusetts. We weren't even there. I mean, again, don't underestimate how low the bar is, but therein lies the extraordinary opportunity with just a little tweak, with just a little bit of energy, with just a little bit of bravado, selling the greatest state God has ever conceived. Truly, our assets are unlike any other place on the planet. We can do miracles, but we have got to admit our failings, and we've got to move with deliberative speed to this agenda and this new dialogue. So thank you all, and we hope you can spend some time in there and hear more details. Thank you all very much for your time.